Welcome to the Believe Podcast, a conversation between friends over a passage of Scripture. I'm Carolyn Kirsten.
And I'm Marvin Williams.
And today is episode 183,
Right.
Looking at the beginning of Philippians chapter 3 today.
Yeah, this is, again, as we've gone through all of these are really, really good books relevant to where we live.
So much, yes.
And we know that Paul is in prison and he's writing a book about joy. Mm-hmm. And but before we dive into the passage, question for you, like we typically do, if you had to update your resume, now you're still with us.
Are you
You're
recommending
still,
that
I'm
I
not.
do?
You're still with us. What recent accomplishment would you include on your resume?
Wow. Well, if I needed to update my resume, I have not done that for a very long time.
Okay.
So it would be a little task. I guess, well, it's almost something I could put on my resume. I'm almost done with my certification in spiritual direction.
Nice.
Come May, I will finish that up. So I guess that would be the most recent, although it's a little projecting into the future, when I would get to do that.
Okay. All right.
And you have very special letters to add.
Kind of similar.
Yes.
It would be something educational. And so in June, I will graduate from Fuller Theological Seminary with a Doctor of Ministry degree. And so I'm super, super excited about it. I just got word today, my oral defense is going to be May 9th.
Okay.
And so I get a chance to defend what I've written. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Absolutely.
And if I was able to add, I would add, we have 2 grandchildren now.
Oh.
So, and I know that.
And I will get to add that also at the end of June. Just one.
Yes.
Just one. Yes.
But
also a new title.
Absolutely. But we're talking about, the reason we say that is because Paul, in this chapter, he gives us his resume. But he doesn't give us his resume to be proud of his accomplishments. Actually, just the opposite. He names some of the things on his resume, and he says, something, that's not really important anymore. It was at one point, but it's not now. So we're going to dive in, and we're going to get a chance to see that. So again, this chapter starts off with a really upbeat kind of message that Paul gives. And how does he start?
He says, finally, rejoice in the Lord, which is not something new that he has said in the book of Philippians. And he's going to say it many more times as we continue on in the book. Google's your friend to find little factoids like this. I looked up, it said between 16 and 20 times.
Yeah.
In the book of Philippians, does Paul use the word rejoice or joy? So I think it's somewhat ironic that he says finally, or in the CSB, he says, in addition, rejoice in the Lord, because he's been saying it and saying it and saying it
over and over
just
again.
in case you missed it.
Yeah, that's right.
Here it is again, rejoice in the Lord. When we think of his circumstances being in prison and that it is a message of joy that he is repeating over and over and over, I think that's really quite remarkable.
Yeah, this is so different than our culture today. So again, just to let people know, this is not Paul denying his circumstances. Mm-hmm. This is not the power of positive thinking. This is not this sense of I am. This is something that's happening to me, but I'm denying that it.
Right.
That
it's not ignoring reality.
It's not that at all. It is. So the context of this is he says, "Rejoice in the Lord." So Paul is saying that even though these circumstances are true of me, something that's even more true of me is my union with Christ. So his joy is taking place in the sphere of his relationship with Jesus. Now, just to remind us that happiness is based on our happenings. That is what happens to us. Joy is based on a deep relationship with Jesus Christ. And this is what Paul is talking about. The reason why I can rejoice in the Lord, I can have joy in my circumstances, is because I am still united with Christ. His death and his resurrection is still true to me. And that is what's giving me perspective while I'm incarcerated. Probably another thing that he's rejoicing about is that many people, we talked about in a previous episode, many of the guards are responding to the gospel. They are getting a chance to hear the gospel. And so Paul is saying, like, yes, I'm in prison, but but so many good things are happening as a result of me being here. So just as I'm rejoicing in the Lord, he is saying to them that despite your circumstances, you too can rejoice in the Lord as well.
And don't you think that attitude of rejoicing in the Lord enables him to view his circumstances differently? I mean, if he was wallowing in depression and, self-doubt and my life is worthless, I can't accomplish anything, here I am in prison, I don't think he would have taken, maybe even not have had the mindset to share Christ with those guards. But because regardless of his circumstances, he is rejoicing in the Lord. That's his foundation. That's where he's rooted. That enables him to view his circumstances differently.
Absolutely. And I think also, a little bit of science here, those mirror neurons, that is when you are, if you're sad, then it will project on me, and I'll be kind of probably feel a little sad as well, because I'm mirroring what you are exhibiting or projecting. And I think in this case, Paul is exhibiting this sense of joy. And remember in a previous episode that the Philippians actually were impacted by his joy. Mm-hmm. So don't be sad for me. I'm excited. The gospel is the gospel is advancing. And so I think Paul is projecting what's true of him. And I believe the Philippians are also saying, so we can rejoice as well. And we don't have to fear sharing the gospel because one of our leaders is incarcerated, sharing the gospel. We too can do the same thing. So we could spend the rest of the episode on just that verse number 1. But I do want to add one thing.
Okay.
Not only is it is the sphere of which Paul is rejoicing, that is this whole idea that I'm rejoicing in the Lord, that because of my union with Christ. But this can also mean that Christ is the agent of joy. He is the one that's causing Paul to rejoice. So this is not Paul mustering up, kind of what you talk about sometimes. It's not mustering up energy to be joyful. But Jesus Christ is supernaturally causing Paul to be joyful in his circumstances. So that's another angle, another supernatural angle that I think the reason why Paul can say rejoice in the Lord.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move from verse 1
to
verse 2.
Yes.
Not very far. But we've got, Paul loves these repeated phrases. And so here he's telling the Philippians, look out, or in the CSB, watch out.
Yeah.
He says, look out for the dogs, look out for the evildoers, look out for those who mutilate the flesh. So we're talking about circumcision again, which we talked a lot about in Galatians.
Yeah.
And it is those legalists who are creeping in again and causing now the Philippians, well, Paul is warning, don't let yourself fall into legalism where you think it's your works or your behavior that is what makes you a Christian, reflects your faithfulness.
Yeah.
Look out, look out, look out. So he's repeating it. He's pretty serious about this.
And he's not talking about Rottweilers. He's not talking about German Shepherds or Doberman Pinschers. He is actually, he uses this term dogs because dogs in this moment, during this time, they were despicable. They were kind of the low of the low. They were impure. And also, Gentiles were considered, they kind of use phrases like dogs for Gentiles. Now, remember, these are Jewish Christians who are misrepresenting the gospel. These are Jewish Christians that are taking the value and the power away from the gospel. And so Paul is so serious about this. He is so serious about protecting the gospel that he calls these Jewish Christians dogs because what they were doing was despicable. They were taking the gospel, the pure gospel, again, we are saved by grace through faith alone in Jesus Christ. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to become circumcised in order to be saved, which these Jewish Christians were telling the Philippians that they had to do. And so Paul is so serious. This is kind of a reminder of Galatia, right?
For sure.
The book of Galatians, where Paul is like, I love you, but I'm going to have to tell you the truth. You cannot have Judaizers coming to tell you that in order to be saved, you have to be circumcised. So Paul is very, very serious about this. And again, I think we have to be reminded that our accomplishments, our works, our efforts, human efforts, cannot save us and cannot even keep us saved. It is by the power of God through Jesus Christ that does that.
Yeah, he goes on in verse 3 to use the phrase, put no confidence in the flesh. It's not things that you do in your body with your own energy that make you grow in your relationship with God or earn more of God's love. I like how the Message paraphrases that phrase of no confidence in the flesh. It says, we couldn't carry this off by our own efforts, and we know it, even though we can list what many might think are impressive credentials. So he's like, it's not about who you are, what you do, the relationships you have, any of those things. I mean, we can think of a lot of things that we might put confidence in.
Absolutely. That
are fleshly, whether that is our own abilities, whether that is our reputation, whether it is how our kids' behavior reflects us. There are a lot of ways we can fall into putting confidence in our flesh. Paul is saying, nope, none of that.
Yeah.
None of that earns you a relationship or earns you God's love, earns you more of God's love. Do not put confidence in your flesh.
Yeah. So we know this, Carolyn. We know that this is not the way. And yet we continue to try to do it. And so why do you think it is we tend to try to earn our worth as Christians by human effort and by the things that we do and the things that we've accomplished? Why do you think that's true? If we know all of this is so clear in Scripture, and yet we find ourselves moving in that direction.
I'm afraid it's because we are flesh, and it's right here.
Yeah.
And there is positive feedback.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Even if I'm not thinking about, I might put confidence in my flesh to earn another person's favor or approval. If I'm not even thinking about earning God's approval, that's another way we might put confidence in our flesh to get good feedback from other people. So that plays into all kinds of things from, someone complimented me on that top I wore to church on Sunday. Well, I'm going to for sure be sure, to wear that. That's what, like we can go there and putting confidence in what we're wearing, what we're saying, back to our, even our degrees, like there are all kinds of things that, because they are right there and we do get a little positive feedback about those things. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's easy for us to fall for that short-term approval versus the long-term perspective of this is not really getting me anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, in our performance-based culture, we just don't believe that there's anyone out there that doesn't base our worth on performance, not even God. And we attempt to build our ledger so that when he looks at the assets and the things that are advantageous for us or to us, we believe that God is going to say, wow, look at your ledger. That, I've given money. I've gone to church more than twice a month. Or, I've helped the old lady across the street or whatever it might be. That most certainly will kind of help God see that I'm a really, really good person. So I think, we from the time we were small to even now, it has been a performance-based culture. Our teachers give us stars. Mm-hmm. They give us smiley faces, and they give us red A's or whatever it might be. And so if I jump through the hoops, then I am going to get rewarded. And God is saying, no. That is not, Paul is saying, no. You cannot earn your way to heaven. It is truly, truly a gift. And we can't say it enough. Mm-hmm. It is the gift of God that comes through Jesus Christ. And I think we have to constantly repeat it, because we find ourselves going back into a performance-based kind of relationship with God. Yeah.
Then now we are getting to the resume part.
Yes.
Where Paul he says, right after saying, put no confidence in the flesh, he says, though I myself have reason for confidence in the flesh. And then he lists all of these quite exemplary accomplishments on his part, or things that are true of him and his identity because of the family that he was born into. He lists them all off, and it is pretty impressive.
It's hard for anybody to compete with this resume that Paul has. I mean, he's Pharisee of Pharisees, taught by the amazing Gamaliel, and so he is, in fact, an exemplary specimen of someone who is a religious zealot. And but does he do this to say, "Hey, look at me"?
No, because then we get to verse 7 where he says, "But whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ." And then double clicks on it, to use your phrase. Yeah. "Indeed, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord." So it is, I picture all of these accomplishments, this huge long list, and he just tears it up. And in fact, does more than tears it up, because he considers it a loss. Like what was the black is now in the red. Like it does nothing for me. In fact, and maybe this is back to what we were talking about earlier, those things that we do pursue really are a detraction from us, because they're keeping us from the surpassing value or the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. If they're pursuing those things is distracting us from knowing him. Yeah,
and everything you just said, it really is kind of a balance sheet. You know, you have your advantages and disadvantages. You have your profit and your loss, using accounting terms, and that's what Paul would be using here. Everything that was in the asset column, which is all of his accomplishments, he's now moved them to the liability or the loss column, and it's like this is someone who is committed and devoted to Jesus Christ, to say all of these things, they're not nearly as important as they once was. In fact, I count them rubbish. That's the word that is used. Or in some places it's dung. Like it's, Paul is actually saying this is garbage now. And the only thing that matters more than anything is me knowing Jesus Christ. And again, what an example that he gives us. Yeah.
It reminds me again to the phrase he used in chapter 1, verse 21, where he said, "To live is Christ."
Yeah.
Here he says the surpassing value of knowing Christ. That's what it's about. He said to live is Christ. And there are so many things that our world says to live is to set yourself up for retirement.
Yeah.
To live is to have as many friends so that in any, you've got all the circles, you've got all the connections. To live is to get advanced degrees and be known as a person that knows a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But nope, to live is Christ.
Yeah.
And we're emphasizing a lot because Paul,
over
and over in different
exactly.
ways, the surpassing value of knowing Christ. To live is Christ. That is actually what all of it is about.
Yeah, I love it. And again, he says, the thing that I want more than anything, more than anyone calling my name, even more than planting churches, I want to know Christ. And the power of his resurrection, fellowship of his suffering, I want to know Christ. And that is, again, I suppose in our minds we say that, in our hearts we might believe that, but Paul is actually saying, like, no, everything that I've done is now considered rubbish, because the one thing I want more than anything, I want to know Christ. I want to know him intimately. I don't want to just know about him, but I want to know him intimately. And he uses even the phrase, my Lord. My Lord is a very personal, intimate title or phrase. And so Paul is saying, I'm giving up everything to know Jesus Christ more and more. And we're all on a journey. We're all progressing. And I pray that would be my prayer, that I want to know him. I want to know him more intimately with each passing year. And that's what we want for everyone who's listening and for our congregation. We want to see Christ formed in every single person that's a part of our church family, and so that they too might say, like Paul, yeah, we want to know Christ.
Okay, so then what does this look like on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Because knowing Christ, if that and the surpassing value of knowing Christ, well, that would be super easy if I could just sit around and read my Bible all day
Right.
and listen to worship songs and pray and journal, but that's not my life.
Yeah, that's not my life.
So, and I have all that other stuff we were talking about, friendships and classes to take and work to do and laundry to fold. So how can my goal be knowing him when I have to get my kid to soccer practice at 5:30?
No, that's really good. I think in these moments we kind of get to know him as we go. This is not just sitting around reading the Bible. I wish I could do that too. Just sit around, read the Bible, but it is knowing him in the faces of others. It is knowing him in the mundane. So how can I know Christ in the midst of changing a dirty diaper? Well, I'm serving my family. I'm serving my children. I'm serving my neighbor. And that is one way. I'm listening to the voice of the Spirit of God. Go love your neighbor in this tangible way. Love your family in this wash their feet as Jesus did in John 13. That is a way to get to know Jesus Christ in a way that we just can't just by sitting around or on John Donne's island and not facing and interacting with individuals that come our way. Sometimes there are individuals who may not like us and we may not like them. And those are moments where we get to let the Spirit of God produce the fruit of the Spirit in us, love and joy and peace and patience. It is in our interactions with people and asking the Spirit of God to give us the mind of Christ. That's when we get a chance to know him and know him in deeper and more personal and intimate ways.
Yeah, that's really good. Because I do think we have a tendency to think, okay, my life is divided up into slices of a pie.
Yeah.
And, or the list of to-do lists, and we put God as a to-do item that, yeah, we really want to do it. And we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also have the other things we have to check off. Instead of thinking of our spiritual life as one slice of our life's pie, if we think of everything is spiritual, and we have the opportunity to invite God into all of those
Absolutely.
things. And it looks exactly like what you were just talking about. Consciously, it means paying attention, listening incarnationally to the people that we're interacting with, whether that's coworkers, whether that's our 4-year-old, whether that's our neighbor, looking for how we can love God and love others amidst all of those things. It does mean using the skills and abilities that he's given us in our workplaces, in our soccer practice, whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. So I don't want listeners to get discouraged feeling like, okay, yeah, that would be great. I do want to know God, but I don't know how to fit that in.
Yeah, yeah.
That it really is, that's a mindset shift. It's not fitting it in. It's, okay, here is my life. Where is God in that? And where can I invite him in all the more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So even as we prepare to end this episode, one of the questions that came to me, and we can use this question in more of a rhetorical fashion than us actually answering the question. And that is, what in my life do I need to start counting as rubbish so that I might know Christ and for the sake of Christ? Paul says all of these things that I've accomplished, they are now in my lost column. And getting to know Christ and knowing Christ is in the profit column. And so I've been asking myself the question, what is it that I need to start counting as rubbish, that I've placed stock in, that I've gained identity from, that I need to say, something, I need to start counting this as rubbish, and that I may get to know Christ. One of the examples that for me, when I was doing martial arts, I had a bunch of trophies that I won either doing what we call kata. It's a prearranged fight, as well as actual fighting. And one weekend, the Spirit of God just simply said, those have become your Isaac, and that you need to sacrifice them. You need to count them as rubbish. And it pained me. That weekend, I put all of my trophies on the curb for the garbage person, the garbage man, garbage woman to pick up. And you should have seen me. I'm looking out of the window, like all of my
Waving
trophies. Yeah,
goodbye.
exactly, waving. and so I think that even in right now, I think we have to ask, what is it that I need? What I'm placing my trust in that I need to count as rubbish, so that I might get to know Jesus a little bit better. And that moment for me was a moment for me to get to know God a little bit better, because the Spirit kind of burrowed down in my soul and said, "You, this is what you live for now," and so I don't want that anymore for you. And so there was a lot of spade work that the Spirit of God had to do in my heart, and I would encourage all of us to let Him do that spade work, to say what is rubbish, and what do we need to count as rubbish for the sake of getting to know Jesus.
That is good. I know we were going to do it rhetorically, but I had another thought too. As we last week talking to several people who just wrapping up the Lenten season, who have felt like the things that they gave up for Lent, they're going to carry forward to some extent, including me. I was one of those people that said that I gave up, social media scrolling, and found actually I did not miss out on much of anything. And that is something that I am going to carry, that I used to set a lot more time to than I even realized.
Sure.
I consider that rubbish. And even this morning, as I was eating my breakfast, when I would usually be scrolling and just checking in on all the things, I picked up a book that I'm reading right now, which is a phenomenal book. I read 3 pages of it that I would not have read.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
So,
really
there are
good.
some very practical applications for that. As we were talking about, the surpassing value of knowing Christ. It isn't just inviting him into the things you're doing. Maybe there are some things
Absolutely
that we need to drop off, whether those are idols in our heart that we need to get rid of, or maybe it is just some practical things that take our time that we should be considering as rubbish.
Yeah. Very good.
So we will wrap up. What can we believe about God, ourselves, and others? We did just talk a lot about a good application for ourselves, but what can we believe about God then?
If we're looking at that first verse, rejoice in the Lord, and Jesus as the agent of joy, man, I can believe that He wants to empower me to have joy in the midst of adversity, in the midst of unlikely circumstances or painful circumstances. Like Paul is in prison, and Jesus is the agent of his joy, and I believe that God can and will give me joy in the midst of painful circumstances, and what I can believe about me is man, I think whatever is causing me not to know Christ better, I need to find those ways to either give them up, or some just very practical things to let Christ be the hub of the wheel, and let His life flow through me in every other area of my life, whether it's family, friends, whether it's finances, what have you. I think He wants me to let Him have those spaces as well.
Yeah. What I can believe about God is something I am going to choose to believe, and then I want to believe it more, is that knowing Christ is more valuable than anything. Like, I do believe that. I also need to grow in my belief of that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of myself as well. Like, okay, Paul hits this hard. To live as Christ. He gets something that I know I get on some level, but not as fully even as I want to. Because I think, man, if I did know that to live is Christ, and that Christ is more valuable than anything, those things that do distract me or weigh me down, it would be easier to view them as rubbish. So I know I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Those things do still capture my attention or my time. So that's what it is
That's
for
good
me.
stuff.
Knowing that surpassing value all the more.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, friends, for joining us. Encourage you to read this passage, read it with a friend, and have your own spiritual conversation about it.